Coronavirus infections are unfortunately skyrocketing across the country.
The cost of body bags and gowns went up by more than 1,000%.
But there is a glimmer of hope. 2 vaccines, now in late-stage testing, could bring the pandemic under control by spring.
Hello and welcome to G0 World. I'm Ian Bremmer, and today, the race for vaccines. It will put an end to the biggest global crisis of our lifetimes, and the American public just days away from the first doses once the FDA approves emergency use of the top candidates, ones from Moderna and Pfizer. Several others are in late-stage trials around the world. And my guest today is Moderna co-founder Noubar Afeyan. We'll talk about the cutting-edge technology that created a vaccine in world record time and the many challenges that still lie ahead. He's been called the father of modern vaccines. Dr. Maurice Hilleman, the late virologist who spent decades working for Merck Pharmaceuticals. 1963, his 6-year-old daughter woke up with a sore throat. It led to one of the biggest breakthroughs in modern medicine.
Took throat swabs, took them back to the lab and froze them. So now I had specimens out of Geraldine, my daughter.
By 1967, Merck had a license for a mumps vaccine, less than 5 years for work that normally takes decades. But that record is now being shattered. It's an unprecedented scientific development in a whirlwind year of crisis.
China says the number of people infected by a mysterious respiratory virus has more than tripled over the weekend.
We first heard about coronavirus in early 2020. By March 11, the World Health Organization officially declared the outbreak a pandemic. In just 9 months, there's been more than 65 million cases worldwide, 1.5 million dead. And with upwards of 200,000 new cases daily in the United States alone, the virus is showing no signs of slowing down. But luckily, scientists around the globe have been speeding up their efforts to stop it. There are now dozens of vaccine contenders, and 2 are making major headlines for the results they've already shown in clinical trials, both with around 95% efficacy. First, there's a Fortune 500 giant, Pfizer, that for more than 170 years has been turning out everything from Advil to Zithromax. And then there's Moderna, a 10-year-old biotech company that doesn't have a single approved product on the market. The startup caused quite a stir when they announced that their COVID vaccine was developed in just 2 days. 2 days! The money came pouring in, including more than $2 billion of government funding from Operation Warp Speed. Even Dolly Parton got in on the act. She gave a $1 million donation. As the limelight has grown, so too the questions.
We should mention Moderna is not without its critics. Some scientists had previously said that the fast-track nature of all this essentially amounted to science by press release.
Not only has a successful vaccine never been made this fast, it's actually never been made this way. Both the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines use a revolutionary technology called messenger RNA, or mRNA, that doesn't require the actual virus to create immunity in the human body.
Essentially, the patient makes their own vaccine.
We've come a long way in the 50 years since Geraldine's throat swab, but Dr. Hilleman's invention has prevented mumps in millions of kids for decades and is still in use today. Will these coronavirus vaccines be the shot in the arm that the world so desperately needs? There are a lot of potential roadblocks ahead, and that's what I'm talking about today with the co-founder of Moderna. Noubar Afeyan, he is co-founder and chairman of Moderna. So good to be with you, Noubar.
Great to be here, Ian.
So you're kind of the man of the year right now. I mean, when did you realize that what you've been working on is truly game-changing?
Well, Ian, about three weeks ago, we received the first look at the interim results from our phase 3 trial, 30,000 subjects involved. And that glimpse already indicated that we had a very strong statistically significant signal of efficacy at 94.5%. We kind of cracked open the whole kind of the final analysis of the results, and what we saw across 196 cases is a 94% efficacy. And importantly, we saw in serious COVID cases a split of 30-0. All 30 cases were in the placebo group, which represents 100% protection. That bodes well for a broader population. Obviously, this is a relatively small study compared to what we expect to vaccinate, but that all kind of sinks in pretty quickly. And the 10 months of work we've done to get to this point following 10 years of science and technology development, but the last 10 months now all of a sudden has shifted our emphasis and focus to how are we going to get this vaccine distributed and how do we ensure that it's safely administered and we track the folks who receive it. So there isn't much time to look back, but certainly it's a super gratifying and a sense of relief to know that the science and the technology that Moderna pioneered some 10 years ago seems to be having a pretty significant impact.
As you say, this is a completely new technology. For the audience, give us one quick minute on how this works, the mRNA vaccine. What is it that makes this unprecedented in human beings?
Okay, you can time me on the minute, Ian, because I've had to do this in longer and shorter time. So here it goes. So the central tenet in biology of life is that DNA is a molecule that stores information. Messenger RNA, mRNA, is the piece that copies that information over to making proteins, which are the important parts that govern the functioning of different cells. So messenger RNA is what we use to deliver the information to the body of the subject. And inside the body, we have specially formulated this such that the mRNA can get into certain cells that in turn translate the mRNA into proteins, just like the cells know how to do. But the protein we've coded for is a protein that is on the surface of this coronavirus. So what we're trying to do is to educate the immune system to see the protein before it's seen the virus and be ready with the arsenal of immune cells and antibodies to attack that protein. Now, when a virus shows up to somebody who's had their immune system activated in that way, the immune system knows exactly what it's looking for and neutralizes the virus. That's why we see this kind of efficacy.
We have people putting timelines out now for when, it'll be normal for people again, when their step will be in line. We have President-elect Biden talking about 100 days that we have to all wear masks, which, you hear that, and a lot of people in the American public are going to think on day 101, as long as we wear those masks, we'll be okay. If we've got two companies, and only two companies, that are putting out large numbers right now of what we hope are going to be these vaccines for everybody, but it's never been done before, and a lot of things have to go right, shouldn't we be a lot more cautious in terms of the timeline we're looking at in 2021?
I agree with you that we're not within 3 months of kind of taking a deep breath and saying, okay, we're moving on. This is going to be an issue around us for many more months than that. But that does not mean that we will be embattled the way we are. We will be as scared as we are, as worried that every slight gathering is going to cause yet another gigantic spread. I do think that the combination of discipline, distancing, masks, all the things we've been hearing about, but now adhered to, coupled with an increasing and smart deployment of the vaccine to the right set of people so that we protect the vulnerable and those we need to support the vulnerable, I think all of that will conspire together to get us to a better place. But I don't see that through at least the middle of next year. So I think we're going to live with a pandemic for much of 2021, but I don't think it's a binary thing. We have a pandemic and everything's awful, or the pandemic's gone, therefore everything is great again.
If we're looking at when we think that most Americans can actually get vaccinated, and I understand there are uptake issues, but in terms of production and distribution, is the level of uncertainty around that a 3-month period, a 6-month period? Is it potentially a 1-year period? What do you think we're thinking about?
I think that based on everything that we've seen so far, I think that there's a reasonable expectation that come the second quarter of next year, so spring of next year, there will be adequate supplies to vaccinate certainly in excess of 100 million people. And that does not rely on any kind of additional major new vaccines. If there's some new vaccines that come along, that's even better. But I would say that there is a path to that, but there are risks along the way, and that's what we need to keep in mind, as you're saying.
Let me talk a little bit about the interaction, the interdependence between the producers and the U.S. government. Maybe start with Operation Warp Speed itself. Pfizer, of course, didn't take money for the research. You guys did about $1 billion. Give me a little bit of what was the thinking behind your decision, especially since you had lots of funding sources already, to be a part of and receive that money from the U.S. taxpayer.
Well, the Operation Warp Speed, let me just say at a high level, was, in my view, an important part of what allowed the current situation to exist. The government did not just offer Moderna the support, it offered everybody the support. And everybody but Pfizer, for their own reasons, being the large company that they are, took that support, because in addition to the support, what that also involved is being part of a consortium that harmonized clinical trials, protocols, tests, a lot of open communication about the results as we were doing phase 1, phase 2. Phase 3 is a separate matter, but there was a lot of sharing, and that whole thing was enabled by Operation Warp Speed. So yes, we certainly, as the least resourced company, felt that this was the appropriate thing to do, because we were taking the money not only thinking of this year, but also thinking ahead of being in a position to prepare to produce up to 1 billion doses next year. You should realize that the timelines are such that unless we placed orders back in June, July for hundreds of millions of doses, we would not be in a position in 2021 to deliver. So the money went to more than R&D. That's a bit of a misconception.
We're going to see Americans and others around the world starting to receive these vaccines. Not only is the technology new, but also requiring cold chain support. As you think about this rollout, what are the things that are going to be critical to watch?
The way I think about it is that I'm not sure what our alternative was. The reality is that while this country has never done this before, nobody has at this scale. There is no institution that could do it as an alternative either. And so we're quite comfortable that the distribution process that's been put in place is the best chance we have.
What are the things that we don't know yet? I mean, when we're rolling out to billions of people vaccines that didn't exist, even months ago, what are the things that we don't yet know? For example, how long it lasts and, sort of what kind of transmission, long-term side effects. What are the range of things that really we'd be much more comfortable in a year and 5 years' time that we're going to learn?
A good question. Look, we don't know as much as we didn't know about the virus, and we still don't. In other words, when your threat is unknown and new, it's hard to imagine that you can know more about your deterrent or your counterpunch than you do about the threat. And there's a lot we don't know about the virus. We don't know what its ultimate mutations will be. We don't know exactly how much mortality it can cause, because it's hard to get that number given how we're trying to limit its spread based on techniques of masks, etc. So there's a lot we're learning about the virus, and we will also learn about the vaccine. So as you pointed out, how long will the antibody response offer protection against a new infection? Will a new infection be severe after a vaccine ever, or will it always be a muted response so that even if somebody gets infected, they do not get severe COVID, which would be effectively, if you think about it, a preemptive therapeutic. So there's going to be some things we're going to learn, how long it lasts, but many of the other things I mentioned. And I think that the good news is so much is being focused now on this experiment, this global experiment. I've described this to people. There's been the recent statements made that the mask is perhaps the best vaccine. I view the vaccine as the best mask. It's a molecular mask, and once we have it on board then presumably it will protect us. We don't know for how long, but we're creating in a global collective immune system that has the information needed to counteract the virus wherever it attacks.
The other piece of this, of course, is what percentage of the population feels comfortable with all of this. The numbers, went down a lot under the Trump administration. They've gone up a little bit after the Pfizer and the Moderna announcements. Hopefully that will continue. I just saw that 3 former presidents have said that they're willing to get the vaccine publicly, and indeed even President Obama said that he would do it on television. Do you know if that's going to be a Moderna vaccine or not at this point?
I don't know. I hope so, but I don't know. And I think that, my attitude is, I think at some point we're all vying to have protection from whatever source we can get, and so it's going to be interesting to see. From a timing standpoint, I expect these vaccines to basically come on the market within a week of each other, plus or minus. And there's a particular set of guidelines that's been laid out of who gets the vaccine. As we've discussed earlier, the storage conditions are such that my guess is one set of vaccine will go one direction, another will go to places which can handle this, and that may affect who gets which vaccine first.
You guys are fairly busy right now, but I would assume that technology would also apply to all sorts of other viruses that we vaccinate against. If that's the case, what do you think are the things that we'll be attacking first beyond coronavirus with mRNA, and what's the impact likely to be?
So I'll give you an example. We have an active program in Zika virus that's shown some very strong results. We have a very active program in CMV, cytomegalovirus, which is the single largest cause of birth deformities in babies born from mothers who get infected during pregnancy. No solution, no vaccine for that. First time ever, we've shown very impressive data. And several other vaccines. And of course, importantly, adjacent to the general notion of a respiratory virus is influenza. We have made do with a 50-60% efficacious vaccine for influenza for a long time. We've told ourselves, it's seasonal, it changes, we need eggs, we need this and that. But the reality is that it's possible, we think, that influenza can be attacked with maybe not one mRNA, but several mRNAs that cover a range of variants of the presented proteins in that particular strain. So a lot of things to come, but already a whole lot that are way down the path and entering, in one case, soon phase 3 trials. So I think the technology, if anything, this pandemic accelerated the learnings and the proof points, but the underlying science is already well on its way to make many new vaccines.
And maybe just to close a little bit on the disinformation, a little bit on the anti-vaxxing sentiment, and how much of a problem does it pose, in your view, to the obstacles that we need to get over in order to beat this thing?
In any debate, if one side has to offer facts and the other side can offer doubts, and they're considered of equal value, then the ones who offer doubts will always have an advantage, because it doesn't take much to raise doubts. It takes a lot to create facts. I would argue that the best decisions are made when both sides of the argument are based on fact. And there is no fact-based argument that says that vaccines are in some way problematic if properly tested, if properly administered, and properly followed up. So I think that, broadly speaking, I'm obviously well aware that there's a very strongly held view by some in the anti-vax community, but then in the current information kind of distribution systems we have with social media, etc., I would say the concern is that folks who aren't actually given facts kind of confuse what are doubts and what are facts as though they're the same thing.
Noubar Afeyan, great to be with you.
Thank you.
That's our show this week. Come back next week, and if you like what you see, and of course you do, because otherwise why would we do this? It's our little connection, just you and me and a whole bunch of other people, but really it's special. I know it is. Take a minute to sign up for G Zero's most excellent morning newsletter. It's called Signal.